Welcome to the Sham Show.
With Marco and Curtis.
My name is Alberto Altamore. Welcome to the Sham Show, and we are here to uncover shams.
Episode 1. Bada bing, bada boomer.
The Sham Show. Oh.
Alright, Sham Show. We're here with Alberto. We're going to talk about coronavirus and all of its implications.
Yes, indeed.
So, this is Alberto Altamore. I'm Marco Altamore. This is Kurt. This is my dad. I've known him since I was born.
Really? That long? Has been that long? Okay.
Quite some time, 24 years. He is going to explain basically what's brought us here to where we're at and kind of a little bit of his past and what he's accomplished and basically any credentials or information he'd want to share with you guys before he starts talking about coronavirus. So,
Which is a very hot topic now, and everybody, of course, is talking about it. And so, well, first of all, Marco and Kurt, thanks for having me on your first show and everything else.
Thank you for
congratulations,
Absolutely.
and I
Excited
hope this is
to
a big
delve
success
in.
for you guys. You bet.
Thank you.
Great first guest.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
It's an honor to be here.
what led you into your rabbit hole of corona research?
Oh, and it's becoming more than a rabbit hole, of course, now. But no, I think it's. I'm glad actually that you picked this topic of coronavirus to talk about because it's it's in everybody's mind. I don't think there is a television that you can turn on, or a newspaper, or a magazine, or especially now with social media, with the Facebook and internet, that doesn't say something about the coronavirus, which of course is important, and it's important for a number of reasons. We are now here in the United States starting to feel the great effects of what's going on. As we can see behind us, there is, of course, a television screen that shows a map of the world map.
It's a live count.
And it's a live count.
You want to read off some numbers real quick?
Well, I mean, total confirmed numbers, as you can see, is over 156,000. I think the total deaths, if I'm not mistaken, where's that at? That's almost 6,000, 5,833, which is worrisome. So just to start out with, I think there's definitely different components to the coronavirus, and I think we need to talk about not only the health of it, the overall health of the coronavirus, what it is, what it isn't. The economics of the coronavirus, which I think is very important, and we have already felt it in the market, so we're going to be feeling it even some more. The social aspect of what's that going to become socially aspect also. And I think also it's very important to talk about this as far as the political aspect as well, because there's no question that this has become political, will continue to become political. And in any situation like this, whether it's a war or some sort of disease, virus that spreads around the world, it does become political. My biggest worry on the political side is the fact that it's become partisan. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Because I don't think that this is an issue that whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican or you're independent, it's going to affect you. And I don't think it should be a partisan issue. And unfortunately, I think we've come to the point in this country where we're making everything partisan, especially for the last 3.5 years. But even with the coronavirus, which is going to affect everybody, we should not make this partisan.
To the point where people will either believe in a virus or not believe in whether their party believes in it when it's actually a virus. Facts are facts.
Facts are
this
facts.
Virus is spreading.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not Republican or Democrat. It's a virus. People are dying. People are being affected.
Absolutely.
So I did want to start off with, basically tell us about you, and I obviously know about you, but tell our viewers, tell Kurt, tell Slouch.
Right. So a little bit about my background, I guess. So I was born in Italy. I was born in Tuscany, Italy, which is a beautiful region, of course, of Italy. A little town called Gabbro. And that was in 1961. And we came here in this country in 1968. And I've been in this country, this wonderful country, which I call home today, ever since. I have an incredible love for my country, which is Italy. But once again, I choose to live in this country because it is the greatest country in the world next to Italy. And so
you still have family in Italy.
Absolutely,
we have family here.
As you know, we have family, we have friends, numerous friends. So and of course, not only being born there, but my parents came from Sicily. They were born in Sicily, and then they moved to Tuscany. But I speak Italian. I guess you want to say I'm very Italian also.
The vast majority of the Altamores in your family moved to America.
Yep.
There's a few that are still there. Obviously, you still have friends and family there.
Mhm.
A lot of the Altamores are here, but you still keep in contact in Italy.
Yeah, well, the immediate family, our immediate family, as you know, of the Altamore immediate family is definitely all here.
And if you want to get into what you did when you came here and, where you spent the last...
Sure. Well, I mean, like I said, we came here in 1968. I was only 7 years old. I'm currently 29 years old, so do the math and you figure it out, how old I am. Yeah, sure, 29. And
Catching up on you.
yeah, it certainly is. I'm getting old. I should also say that, in 1976, we did open up a restaurant for people that, know a little bit about the Altamores here in Rockford. A restaurant called Altamore Ristorante by North Main and Auburn Street. And that was, of course, my father, my mother, my sister, and I, we opened it up. We were in business for 40 years. And
How
after
old were you when it opened?
I was 14 and a half when we opened up. And
You basically ran it, right?
I did. My parents at that time spoke practically no English, and so I have an older sister. She hates when I say that.
Older sister.
Older sister. But my dad, even though the fact that she was a little bit older, my dad, of course, being from the Italian heritage, and my dad always relied on me. So wherever he went, I was his mouthpiece. I did everything. So I did all the communication for him, et cetera, et cetera. So when we did open up in 1976. Yes, I did. I was running the restaurant. I did all the hiring, all the firing, all the food orders, the training, etc. The management part of it, everything, because my parents spoke no English. It was tough times. I can honestly tell you, we worked very, very hard in our profession. I think after 40 years, it definitely showed.
I'll attest to that.
Yep.
Me
And
as well.
so we closed that down about now. It's been almost 3.5 years. So I certainly have more time in my hands because before I was completely devoted to the restaurant and what we did at the restaurant. Having said that, also the other qualification that I have as far as maybe on the political side also is, and Marco will know this, is because back in, in the early 90s, I started something called the Illinois Coalition Against Unfair Utilities, which drove me crazy. I spent an enormous amount of time, if you remember Marco, because you were young at the time, but enormous amount of time and finances, et cetera, et cetera. And what that was is literally fighting Commonwealth Edison.
ComEd, like
ComEd.
the electric bills that you receive.
Exactly, we're fighting ComEd, but not only that.
We're gonna do a future episode on this because it is
It's
a great.
a whole sham in
It's a
and of
whole
itself.
sham in itself,
Oh,
and it's a
boy.
great story, and he can tell us the whole story. But just to do a quick recap, if you want to explain basically what happened in
Well, I mean,
a few short words.
yeah, maybe very short words because
There's a lot to it.
There's a tremendous amount to it. But I will tell you in just a moment what really I think that what I took away from that. The most important thing that I took away from that, from me starting the Illinois Coalition Against Unfair Utilities. I think we all get it, of course, bills, whether it's electric bills, gas bills, telephone bills, and I think not for the most part, I think pretty much everybody. I think we look at these bills and we say, doggone it, I mean, why am I paying so much? Or are these bills actually true? And so what I was able to find out, or what I was able to come up with, was the fact of unfair billing on the part of ComEd. Literally, I have in black and white, there was no denying it, that at that time under what was called a demand charge, which is placed on all businesses across the board, but it also affects regular people also. Again,
So it was
not
mostly an additional charge on business electric bills from ComEd. So he noticed this discrepancy
huge discrepancy.
Huge discrepancy, purposeful, intentional discrepancy of overcharging when basically no one else had. I don't think, right?
No, nobody else ever figured it out. Not even the professionals at ComEd. I was
Yeah,
the one
literally
who brought it
people
to
working at ComEd
literally
that were not aware.
the professionals at ComEd, and they were surprised that I even figured it out. But anyways.
And how dramatic of an overcharge would you say that it is for consumers? Like,
For
pretty
consumers and
serious?
businesses, like what percent would you say of the
So
bill?
Half
keep
as much,
in
or-
mind that this was in the early '90s, and
Sure.
I started the Illinois Coalition Against Unfair Utilities in August of 1996. But anyways, to give you a perspective of what we're talking about, we were talking about discrepancies that would amount to in the billions of dollars, not millions, but billions of dollars
Of them overcharging.
of overcharges.
And this was for
And this
probably a decade or
Oh no,
years.
no, no! This was
Going on for decades.
For decades and decades. And I should point out that maybe somebody is now wondering, is this actually true or whatever? I can tell you that they did. I mean, they refunded my money back for 3 years. They didn't want it after I discovered it, but they didn't want to go back any further because otherwise it would set a precedent for other businesses then to go ahead and want money back. I mean,
what was the conclusion then? I know I don't want to spoil the next, the ComEd episode, but basically, what was the result of all that?
Well, the result was for a tremendous amount of work on my part to fight this, and I had many meetings, town hall meetings, et cetera, television, radio shows. Oh my God, for years and years, and finally we had a meeting in Chicago, in the big office in Chicago, and met with the big boys in Chicago, and I presented them with the bills and all kinds of examples in black and white, which was undeniable. Undisputable evidence. And so a short time after that, now keep in mind that this was also a couple years after this, we got into electric deregulation, which I'm sure people have kind of forgotten all about this. Mm-hmm. But that was a very political thing, by the way, it was truly incredible. Talk about Sham.
Mm-hmm. So are they still doing this overcharging discrepancy that you found?
Well, what they did was, sometime after that, then they actually, the demand charge, they lowered it by more than 50%. Now we have what's called new meters. These are all electronic meters, by the way, which I'm not happy about. But once again, I mean, it's a very complicated thing. We're here to talk about coronavirus, but...
For people to understand, you would say that your work with the, establishing the Illinois Coalition Against Unfair Utilities, that definitely affected how ComEd ran their business from that point forward.
I would definitely say so.
Because you were the only person to bring this discrepancy up to them and actually fight.
We fought it, yeah. And I would say, and I certainly don't say this to pat my back or anything else, but I think we did fight the good fight, and I think, what is that, Goliath versus...
David versus Goliath.
David versus Goliath. I think David won.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that. And also, apart from that, the electric situation, we also, I also got into the slamming and the cramming on the telephone side. Also the natural gas, as far as the natural gas situation, also as well. So, anyways, we did a lot of work.
Shams there.
Plenty of shams. But going back to what I said, what I took away from those years of doing that, which was a tremendous drain on me personally and my family, and financial resources, because it went on literally for many years. And what I took away from that is because I had the opportunity to, face to face with individual meetings with elected officials, both Democrats, Republicans, whether on the state level, obviously, because this was all decided in Springfield, our state capital here in Illinois, which is Springfield. And it was, prior to that, I will say to you that I was not naive, as far as I knew that, politics has always been corrupt, will always be corrupt. There is corruption in politics. And if you don't think that there's corruption in politics, let me tell you something, click your heels 3 times and go back to Kansas right away, because you're an idiot. I'm sorry to say. Yeah. So for anybody that does not think, sadly mistaken, for anybody to think that there's no corruption in politics,
you're wrong.
You're absolutely wrong. You're in fantasy.
And this experience drove that home to you. Obviously, you got to uncover a lot of things
firsthand, and really actually get to know a lot of the politicians and actually see what goes on in Springfield and in committees and what they do and what they say in a group setting, and what they say to you individually,
behind closed
doors,
et cetera. I've gotten my fair share of experience from that in the vapor industry. And Kurt has seen it as well, and I'm going through a very similar experience where I'm seeing all these backdoor deals and how they, will maneuver things to pass them, and gerrymander. You can go on and on and on, and obviously in every extent, we will be talking about politics a lot, because in every extent of our life,
politics is involved.
Politics is involved, and politics is corrupt. So
just talking about this, honest to God, brings back so many bad memories.
Yeah.
And what I took away from this, to kind of conclude this on the Illinois Coalition side, against unfair utility side, was I was not naive to politics prior to starting this. I was certainly not naive, and I realized that there was corruption in politics. But it opened up an insight for me, which, honest to God, there was many a times, Marco, when I was fighting the good fight, as you know, staying up late at night, doing all kinds of meetings, staying away, from the restaurant, from you guys and the family when you guys were young, et cetera, which bothered me tremendously. But there was times that I wished that I had never discovered the discrepancies in those bills, because it wore me out to see the type of corruption that not only is pervasive in the state of Illinois, but I think in politics in general. And it's disturbing, it's depressing.
And it's something that weighs on you, and now you see it in everything.
Yes,
too.
it weighs on me tremendously.
It's not just ComEd. It's every utility, and it's every aspect of politics.
Yes.
It's basically every aspect of our lives.
Every aspect of our lives.
We're seeing that with coronavirus,
right?
Because it's affecting the world economy and every aspect of our lives. So it kind of unveils a lot of things.
Absolutely.
I did want to address what you would say your political leanings are, just to get that out there overall.
Sure. First of all, right now, if you ask me right now, I consider myself an independent. And the reason why I consider myself an independent is because of the simple fact that I've seen the ugliness on both sides. There's no such thing, I think, quite honestly, as a good politician. And I hate to say that. And I really hate to say that, because I will tell you this. I think there is actually a lot of good people that when they get into running for an office, whether it's a local office, as in, here we live in the city of Rockford, obviously, because we're broadcasting this throughout the world, so we need to tell people we're in good old Rockford, Illinois.
Illinois.
So, yeah. But whether it's local elections on the city or county level, I think you'll find that the closer you have politics to home, I think the more accountability is there, and I think the more honesty is there. The further out you go, as in the state level, that's where the corruption gets even more corruption. And then the federal, forget about it. Just forget about it, okay? Go make your sausage, go eat it at home, forget about it. All right. So, because that's where the big boys are. All right. So having said that, what I learned was, and once again, I think there's even on the local level or on the state level, I actually, during this time with the coalition, I actually, talked to some individuals that had just entered into politics. In other words, they had just become state senators or state representatives. And the ones, the older cats, the older guys and gals that were there, they're already, they were done. They already were corralled into voting for bills that they never read, and they were told how to vote for those bills. So they were gone. I mean, they were gone. But the ones that had just become, state senators, representatives, and I think for the most part, I think a lot of them really enter it to try to make a difference with good intentions to make a difference. I really believe that. But once you get into that system, forget about it. Yep. The leaders will take you in and they'll say, hey, look, this is the way the game is played.
You want to stay?
You want to stay? You want to keep playing the game? You do it my way. It's as simple as that. And we can get onto that, further.
That'll be another episode.
Yeah. But, and so...
So if you could categorize your political leanings, I would say that from what I know of you, you have a more conservative point of view.
I have a conservative fiscal point of view,
yep.
But I'm open to anything as far as...
I would say you're pretty, I don't know what the exact definition of independent is, but as far as I know, I would say you're pretty strongly independent. Whereas
absolutely.
You might have conservative leanings, but
yep.
you will vote for a Democrat if
absolutely.
You believe in them.
And a Republican as well. Yes.
And a Republican.
I do believe, if you ask me, as far as, being in a business, a small business, which is very tough. To be in a small business, especially in today's environment.
Sure is.
Now, when we started 40 years ago, things were a little bit much different because of the total environment. In other words, rest of regulations, less headaches, etc. But especially today, it's very, very tough to be sort of a small business in all throughout the United States of America. Having said that, I believe in less government, less taxes, all that stuff. But I'm definitely, I would consider myself independent, and I think one of the things that I think that I have, which is good, is that I have, I think, a lot of common sense, and I think we have lost that in this country. For a number of reasons, we have lost, literally, when we look at different subjects, it seems to me that we have lost our common sense, and that's our biggest problem as far as I'm concerned, because there's a lot of issues that we deal with, and they should be dealt with in a common sense kind of approach, and they're not.
Common sense isn't common.
Common sense isn't common anymore. So
the last thing I want to get into before we get into Corona is my thought process on this coronavirus is that there's a whole lot of bias at play. And that's from the media, that's from the right, that's from the left, that's from China. Everyone has their own bias.
Yes.
And my example of that is Trump speaking about coronavirus. Obviously, his bias. What does he have to lose? Well, he has another presidency at stake that he's, coming up very soon. He has investments all around the country.
Right.
He basically lives and breathes the stock market. The stock market does poorly. That reflects on his presidency, and that's going to be forever in history books. So he has that bias. Elon Musk. I like Elon Musk personally. I think he is one of the better corporate giants.
You should say who Elon Musk is, just for those
owner of Tesla, Elon Musk. I think he's one of the better, good-intentioned corporate giants, but of course he has his bias.
Of course.
Now, Elon Musk recently tweeted, "The coronavirus panic is dumb." And people see that as, oh, well, Elon Musk says it's fine, so we don't have to worry about it.
I think that statement, by the way, was a dumb statement on his part.
That's fair, for the record.
Just for the record.
And what's Elon Musk bias?
And Elon, if you're listening right now, call me, okay?
Right.
Let's talk.
We still love you. It was kind of a dumb tweet.
Yeah.
But what's Elon Musk's bias? Well, he has tens of billions of dollars at stake in the stock market. His net worth is entirely based on the stock market, almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
He has very little liquid capital. So if the stock market does poorly and Tesla tanks, which it did,
which it has,
and still is,
yep.
Then of course he's going to have that bias of I'm losing tens of billions of dollars by the day.
Right.
So everyone does have their own bias. My dad, that's why we spoke about this earlier, and his accomplishments and his past. I
don't know if I call them accomplishments, but
the last thing I think that is really important to this conversation that I want to clear up is that he is currently investing in the stock market, and whereas I think that the president's bias or Elon Musk's bias or a lot of these corporate giants' opinions might be skewed, I think my dad has a good opinion and viewpoint and is trustworthy on this. Because he's not looking out for the overall stock market. He doesn't have an election to win. He's not losing tens of billions of dollars. These are his personal investments he's looking after. He's looking out for his own well-being. He's looking out for my well-being. Absolutely. And his friends, Kurt, Slouch, and everyone else. So obviously he knows that if he comes out and says, don't worry about Corona or do worry about Corona, it's not really going to affect his investments. He truly has been researching this and spending hours and losing sleep over it. Because he's interested in, he wants the truth. He's not trying to put out a biased statement to possibly manipulate the market or, say anything that isn't. So I'll let him get into that, but that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, well, thank you, Marco. I appreciate that. And so, having said that, I think we should get into the discussion of of this coronavirus, which is actually called COVID-19. But I think it's commonly referred to as the coronavirus.
I'll have a few questions to start, but starting off, everyone says coronavirus. People are finding it on Lysol containers and bleach containers, and the conspiracy theorists say they knew about coronavirus this whole time. Yeah. How would they have printed them out so fast?
Right. No,
that's not necessarily the case.
No, it's not.
Let's dispel that.
Yeah.
myth.
So in respect to that, and of course it's floating around, social media. And so people should know that, yes, the COVID-19, which is referred to coronavirus, and of course not, it did not start because somebody went to Mexico and drank a bunch of Corona and then they brought it back.
That wasn't it?
That was not it. So just so that you know,
right.
Corona is actually in the family. I know, Kurt, you're still scratching your head thinking, what the hell, is this really true now?
See, this is why we watch you.
His mind's already blown.
I know. Imagine what his mind will be by the end of this.
I'm ready.
But the coronavirus is actually in the family of what they call these coronaviruses that have been around for many years. And when we talk about coronavirus, let's not forget the SARS, which was the severe acute respiratory syndrome, which was started, unfortunately, in China.
When was
as this coronavirus was. That was in about 2002. Okay. And then we also had the MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which was started in the Middle East, and and that was in 2013. So it falls in the same family as that. As a matter of fact, influenza, because we have the common cold, which we all know what the common cold is. But we also have these different strains of influenza. And by the way, let me just stop for a moment and say, I'm certainly not a medical expert. This is based on everything that I have read, And trust me, I mean, I've read a lot of different
He's not a
articles.
medical
So-
expert. He's not a lawyer.
I'm not.
Let's get all that out right now.
Right. So having said that, I'm not a medical expert, but I do play doctor on television.
Yeah. You're playing doctor right now. I suppose.
I'm playing doctor right now. And as
Obviously,
far as
he has researched it, and he does, of course, verify his sources, and he will take the opinion of a credible medical expert, as we all should, with a grain of salt, because we have to always look at the bias and see what the general consensus is. Obviously, he's done that because of his, investments and his well-being.
Right, and so the coronavirus once again is in that family.
So coronavirus is basically the family, and COVID-19 would be the name for the specific strain.
The actual name is the COVID-19, but once again, it's in the corona family viruses. Again, same thing as the MERS or the SARS that we experience.
So the same family.
All the same
family
yeah.
with the different
all these
strains.
influenzas also in the same family.
Okay.
So it's been around a lot of years. So that's why they have stuff like that, whether it's Clorox or Lysol. They're saying is, look, our product kills basically 99.9 as Clorox of all these
that
infections
broad
and
family.
colds and et cetera, et cetera.
That makes sense. So
Which makes sense.
You can take your tinfoil hat off now.
Right, exactly. And the word corona, by the way, is actually derived from the Latin or Italian word corona, which means a crown. Because when you look at these, they have actually there's other pictures, but they actually have these crown sort of appearance.
That's what it looks like under a microscope.
On a microscope for the crowns, and that's why it's called corona. Now, having said that,
Before you get any further, I want to basically just ask this point blank. Obviously, this coronavirus has affected the world. We can see it on the world map. It's everywhere.
indeed,
Have we seen the worst of it in the U.S., just to answer that point blank?
in my
In
opinion,
your opinion.
absolutely not.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I
absolutely
think
not.
this is just the very beginning. They're still testing. They're still finding cases. It's still spreading. And I think a really important factor that people don't know is that, yes, it can change on contact and saliva, but also it's airborne. So
Which, by the way, they were not sure of.
they
before.
weren't aware of, and they were recently confirmed.
Confirmed because of that. And also, let's keep in mind that this situation is fluid. And what I mean by fluid is it's ever changing. In other
Every
words,
second.
Right.
every second, every minute, we get different reports. And also to say, because we had talked about this kind of before we started the show in reference to, we're certainly not experts. And I'm certainly not an expert in coronavirus. And really, and I said this, that really right now, I don't think you can really say there's an expert in actual
There can't be.
coronavirus. They can't be because it's a new strain of virus that they just developed.
You can't be an expert in 3 months or 4 months, however long it's been.
No, they
It's not
still
possible.
they still don't know all. They still have to do a lot of research and and all that. So having said that, I think they have a good grasp because once again, it falls in the coronavirus family. So they've seen that in the MERS and the SARS and
Don't
other
know
things.
this specifically.
This specific,
COVID-19.
this is a new virus. This specific is a little bit different. Now, how's that compare to the common cold, to the influenza? Well, once again, we know what the common cold is. We all get it. God knows we've all had it, and ever since I've been born, we know it even prior to that. So the influenza, there's different strains every year, it seems like, of different influenzas, which affect us with, if you get a cough, a fever, a runny nose, your ears hurt, your throat, all kinds of different symptoms. I think the key importance here to the coronavirus is what I've read, and even from medical doctors have said, is you can get all the symptoms, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. Let's keep that in mind, because everybody's going to be a little bit different as far as the symptoms that they get. But the key one here for this is shortness of breath. So let's not forget that the coronavirus is in the family of respiratory diseases. So once you get it, once it enters into your nose, basically, as most of these viruses come, you get them because you can't get it if I touch you, Marco.
You would have to be touched and then touch your nose.
Touch your nose. It has to go through
I
your
might have
nose.
just gotten it right there.
Yeah, exactly. So don't pluck your nose hairs,
Right.
Because actually,
We'll leave them unplugged tonight.
don't pluck them out because actually, even doctors will tell you they're there for protection purposes.
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
kind of
keep stuff like
Right.
that
just
out.
keep stuff
Keep
like that
dust
out. Right. So I can just see
Another
everybody
fun
now
fact for you.
growing some wonderful nose hairs. No, we don't want
Again,
to
we're
do
not
that.
medical professionals.
We're not okay, but.
Well, if it helps, it helps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, once it enters your system, then unfortunately it invades your lungs, and this is where the problem is.
So
Now,
you got into a great topic. How exactly is this different from the flu and the cold? Everyone says it's basically another flu. I believe that not to be true, and go ahead and explain why that's not the case.
well, again, based
That's
on
not true, actually.
based on again everything that I followed and everything I read, So, for example, and I know a lot of people have made this comparison with as far as the flu, the influenza. There's all kinds of different numbers, but they say, for example, like 50 million people in America thus far, every season we get it, have had an influenza, like a flu or an influenza, and out of those supposed 50 million, or whatever the number is, then so far, I think the number is 20,000 have died, which is a serious number.
Do we know what percent that is?
Sure, because compare that to now with the COVID, or even if you compared it back to the SARS, which had a percentage rate of 6.5%. This one here compares supposedly now to 2 to 3%.
What does?
The coronavirus. The
death rate.
the other one, the influenza, is much lower. It's less than 1%.
Can we do the math on that real quick? Is it 50 million? You said.
Well,
or if we just rough it, we can say that regular influenza or the flu is under 1%. Coronavirus.
Very much under 1%.
Very much under 1%.
Yeah. So this one is 2 to 3. Some people are estimating now even more than that. It just depends.
Right. I've heard estimates as high as 7%.
7% that I've seen estimated is because on the elderly.
Right.
Exactly.
Elderly population.
In the elderly population, because of their immune system, if they don't have a good immune system, like young people.
Yep. Now,
but
the numbers are
also based off of confirmed cases.
Exactly.
Which is another problem is that we don't necessarily have the right testing.
Exactly.
No,
this is very early, and we'll get into that. But these are basically estimates, and again, no one's an expert, like you said earlier.
In my opinion.
But yeah, I don't think no one could be an expert in this amount of time. But as far as we know, the typical flu is far less than 1%, and the coronavirus definitely has a higher death rate.
Yes.
And we're looking at maybe 3%, 4%, and it could be higher depending on the population of people. But it does have a higher death rate, and the thing that I find possibly worse about it is how contagious it is.
Right.
And maybe you can get into that, but again, it is more contagious than the flu as well. So it has a higher death rate and it's more contagious.
And I think really all flus or influenzas are contagious for that reason. So
why is it spreading so quickly? Is it spreading quicker than a normal flu?
Well, like anything else, I think here's the dangerous, I guess, if you want to call it the dangerous part about the coronavirus is that this is something that supposedly, once again, that they're still looking at all the information, but this could sit dormant. Let's say I catch this. This could sit dormant in me for 7 days, 14 days. There was actually somebody that estimated up to 21 days, which I don't know if that's the case.
21 days is an estimation, but the quarantines are 14 days.
The quarantines are 14 days.
They're expecting up to 14 days at least.
Yes. So in these, let's say 14 days, okay, whatever that number is, in these 14 days, if I have it, there is no way of anybody telling that I have this, because it's not like I'm walking around with a big red mark on me, or I'm glowing in the dark or anything of that sort.
What's extra dangerous about that is how similar the symptoms are to the flu.
Exactly.
So a lot of people who have it could
think that they have the flu. Right. And so one person can literally infect God knows how many people by simply just either, if you're sneezing, coughing,
in the same room.
Well, even if you're touching, if you touch something stainless steel, whatever, and that a person touches it also, and now it's airborne also, as far as when we've been told.
But even if my dad came in with it today and we were having this conversation, he could potentially, very easily, because it's airborne, I could contract it. Obviously, if we've touched or anything like that. So it is, I would say, especially contagious, and it has a higher death rate. And the symptoms are flu-like, so a lot of people don't know. And then if you want to explain the test kit situation, we haven't been testing properly for this. We don't have enough test kits.
Let's talk about the test kit situation.
So we just don't know.
As far as I understand, there's been a very large shortage of COVID-19 test kits in the U.S. and
there's a shortage around the world, I would say. Is that right?
Well, I think, like, for example, countries in like South Korea, based on the news and articles that I've read, they can do I think it's 10,000, or they've done a day per day, and so they have done certainly a lot of more testing than here in America. Of course, in the United States, we have not done as much as testing, and I think this is the real problem. And I just want to say this, because this sounds all gloom and doom so far. Mm-hmm. And I'm at the point of perspective that a lot of people say the media has hyped it up so much that we are all in panic mode because we're running out to buy more toilet paper, which I don't get, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But so
has the media hyped it up?
Well, I think yes and no. But so I don't think that we should be in panic mode. Now, should we take a laissez-faire sort of direction and say, oh yeah, this too will pass or whatever? I think not.
No.
Because this is actually, I'm more in the middle. We should take this seriously. We should do what we can to try to stop the spread of it. It's the containment that is important here. We want to try to stop the spreading of this particular COVID-19. That's the important thing is. Now, once again, media, I think in general, which I'm not a big fan of the national media, have not been for many years because of the fact that we all have experienced or seen literally the media say something which was really actually not true, they twisted around, which it just drives me crazy to consider
Trump
that.
says everything is fake news, and he's not exactly wrong.
He's
There's
not
a
exactly
lot
wrong.
of fake news out
It's
there.
always
Right.
biased.
It's not only biased,
and some
but
of it is just fake.
And you know what? I think that's absolutely wrong because journalists have to get a license for that, and I think the license for that should be that listen, just report the news like we used to. You guys are too young to this, but 40, 50 years ago, the journalists would actually report the news, and then people would make up their mind as to say, okay, I understand this now.
And to be clear, we're not saying that CNN is fake news or Fox News is fake news. Every station puts out fake news. We're here to try to tell you all the truths that we know and kind of help you see the bigger picture of this. We're going to be as unbiased as possible. But every news station you see, it's not like we're saying liberal media or conservative media. It's media across the board.
I think
we've experienced that very much firsthand.
Yeah, I think there's bias all over. Now,
aware of that.
so having said that, I don't think that we should be in this country in a panic mode. And once again, we should not take it laissez-faire. I think we need to be in the middle by saying we should take it seriously.
I would agree.
That's where I'm at right now.
I would agree.
And as far as the media is concerned, gosh, I mean, that would take hours and hours to get.
We'll come back to that when we paint this full picture because they have a part to play in this.
Of course, they have a huge part.
And so when you say being in the middle of it, I agree with that. What do you think about current preventative measures that have been implemented, and what else do you think we should do?
Do you think we've done enough in the world?
Right. Is there enough?
The
Do you
US?
think it's going to be effective?
Well, in order to answer that, let me step back, kind of to what Marco was saying before. Why my interest in the coronavirus, or why I have read so many articles, and why I follow it so deeply now.
Why haven't you slept in a week?
Why? That's always a problem. But so I think so going back, the coronavirus started. Supposedly, I think we all know it started in China, in particularly a province called Wuhan, China. And the story seems to be that it started in a seafood wild animal market where, for whatever reason, it was spread from some sort of wild animal, whether
Possibly
it was a bat or a snake or one of these wild exotic animals. And I think, a lot of us can, if you go to Google, you can see all kinds of pictures of bat soup and all these other things.
Basically, someone in China ate some weird shit.
Yeah, okay.
What we're getting at.
That's an understatement. So supposedly that's where it started. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, by the way, that have come about. That there's actually a lab in there that deals with all these types of
They put out the virus on purpose.
Viruses and whatever. That's literally some miles away there from the epicenter of the seafood market. Now, look, I don't want to be a conspiracy nut or whatever, but I think in due time, hopefully, they can actually kind of sort of pinpoint or whatever. Maybe in the future, we'll get some better clarity on that. Although I highly doubt it, because let's not forget that China is not a republic as in America. It is not a democracy. It is a communist country. And I think they have been known to sort of, it's a very secretive sort of society, if you want to call it that. And I think they've been known, even in the past, to hide things and not give full disclosure, and they're not real transparent.
That's definitely, I don't know the extent of it, but they have limited internet access and things like that.
It is controlled, all information is controlled by the People's Republic Party, which is the Communist Party.
And when we get into this full story, that's got a part to play as well, as
Absolutely.
far as China censoring, the situation.
Well, again, I don't want to stray away from my initial point, but I do want to say, since you mentioned that, and we talked about this before the show, that towards the end of the show, I'm going to make a statement which maybe could be harsh to a lot of people, but I think it's important. I mean, not now to have this discussion. We're gonna feed this thing, okay? We're gonna get through it. This is not all doom and gloom. We're gonna defeat it. We're too smart. We humans are way too smart to let this microscopic thing bring us down. But having said that, I think that we need to get down to the nitty gritty, the facts.
How did this happen? How
How
we
did this
find ourselves
happen?
in this situation?
And is there perhaps blame to be put? Because look, let's not forget, when it's all said and done, this is going to be an incredible thing that all the world, it's just not one individual country, the whole world right now is up in arms with this coronavirus. It's going to affect everybody in a bigger or smaller way. Not only the everyday life which we're experiencing, we'll talk about Italy, and also now that apparently Spain and France are in lockdown. So not only that, but the economic impact of this is not going to be millions or billions of dollars. It's going to be multiple trillions of dollars over this thing that started in China that has been spread throughout the world.
Over a basically hard flu. That's what people. That's pretty much the biggest point that I want to get across throughout this whole discussion, which we have a lot to get into. Oh, is it just a flu? Well, first of all, no, it's deadlier and it's more contagious, but it's not just about maybe someone's grandma or grandpa dying prematurely, because it generally is affecting old people. It's about the economic impact, the political impact, the social impact. Across the board, there's a lot of factors at play here, and that's down to the U.S. stock market taking a giant tank. That's down to workers in China who normally have a Chinese New Year during February,
right.
So that's another thing that we'll talk about. And they're gone for all of February. They're supposed to come back to work after February, basically immediately, and this flu has pushed that back. A lot of them are
that was extended for about a week and a half or two, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are still not back to work. And I've heard reports through the vape industry and manufacturers through that Chinese manufacturers are saying, yeah, we're back to work. You can start placing orders again. But literally, they've lied.
And there's still supply problems.
And they have an empty factory, and they're not pumping out the supply, but they need money to start coming in. So, that's kind of anecdotal, and there's little stories like that, but there is definitely a giant impact. And we talk about, 80,000 confirmed cases or 81,000 confirmed cases in China. There's many more. That's obviously going to have a huge impact on the world, and everything that we buy from China, everything we buy from Italy, all the exports and imports from all these countries. Huge impact, and it's beyond just, getting the sniffles and, having a flu and maybe an elderly person dying. This is much, much bigger than that.
Yeah, so going back to sort of the beginning of the coronavirus, it started in China, and it was around, December the 1st of 2019. And from there, it really... It spread from beyond Wuhan, and China at one point about I would say within about 3 or 4 weeks, they saw that the spread of this was going faster than they anticipated. So at one point, a lot of people might recall this, that they put, I think it was either 50 or 60 million people in quarantine.
And that was in Wuhan? That was
in the Wuhan province.
So
Wuhan as the city, it's Hubei or whatever is the province of in that. So going back to kind of how I got into this, twofold. First of all, I think it was kind of, to me, a human interest story, if you want to call it that. So certainly, I think any type of, whether it was the Ebola or the Zika or any of these things, these are all human interest stories that I think we all can kind of grasp and understand and say, hey, look, we look at the pictures, say there's some human suffering or whatever.
And I do want to say before we forget that I have an elderly grandmother that my dad takes care of, and he visits her every single day and has dinner there. So he has contact with his mother, who is elderly and probably has a weaker immune system. And I'll say for me, on my end, obviously we all know elderly people and maybe people with compromised immune systems. My mom works at an independent living care facility where there's 150 old people, and a lot of them, probably most
senior citizens.
Senior citizens.
Yeah,
senior old people that probably have compromised immune systems. So we all have things at play here. We all have an interest in it, and that's one of
because
his interests.
we all have fathers and mothers and aunts and uncles, etc.
We all care about older folks to some extent.
Never too many links away.
Exactly. Yeah. So once again, I mean, this was a human interest story to me, like any human interest story. But also the fact of the matter is, as you brought up earlier in the show, is I've been investing since I've been 23 years old, and
stock market mostly.
Investing in the stock market, correct. And so this was kind of a particular interest to me because for anybody that knows anything about the stock market is things like this, now that we know, can certainly affect not only the American stock market, but any stock markets throughout the world.
And it has.
So
Especially
it's
when
either
it stems from a global player like China.
absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. Well, let's
detrimental.
keep in mind for people that may not know that China is the world's second biggest economy. You know, the United States is the first biggest economy. China is the second. So if China sneezes, the world catches a flu. Okay, it's as simple as that. Not to. So it is. It's no pun intended. Exactly. And let's keep in mind also that, like years ago, and this I want to say was in 2002 when the SARS syndrome came out. China accounted for 4% of gross domestic products. It now today it accounts for 20% of gross domestic.
What time to now?
From 2002 to now. So that's huge.
Exponential.
That's
18
huge.
years, they account for 16 more percent.
That's huge. I mean, I think we all know if you go to the store.
It's very clear we have a dependence on China.
We have a dependence on China, whether it's here and many other places. And most things, if you look in the back, it says "Made in China," et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
That's very
So-
clear. Now, while you're talking about this, I did want to ask, what does make this different from SARS or from the previous outbreaks? Because if they came from China, how exactly is this different?
Well,
it's a flu, so it's you experience different symptoms.
yeah. For example, the SARS they were able to curtail that in a short period of time.
And how are they able
Same
to contain that?
thing with the SARS and also
MERS.
with the MERS, right?
And they were able to contain that just by taking the right measures.
Taking the right measures in
quarantining,
quarantine, exactly.
And this has gotten out of hand.
this has gotten out of hand.
So this is beyond that in that
Well,
way.
but let's not forget something also. That in today's society, we are extremely mobile. Okay, certainly airplanes,
Planes,
boats, cruise ships, but
Exactly.
airplanes especially. These are incubators, I think, for
Right, petri dishes.
petri dishes for germs and whatnot. So it is very, very easy to export an infectious disease from one country to another and literally start infecting thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of people.
So comparatively with illnesses like this before, would you say that they were comparably infectious?
Yeah, would you say that
and were they
SARS
just
was
quarantined
as
or
contagious?
prevented more appropriately?
Yeah, no, the difference here is, once again, going back to the incubation time. So the other ones,
okay.
they were more quickly within
You
1
can
or
see
2
the
days. You
symptoms
can see
right
the
away.
symptoms right away. The bad thing about this particular new COVID-19 is the dormancy of the incubation. Let's figure this out. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you've had it, let's say for 14 days, my God,
man.
you can infect a tremendous amount of people.
We're not saying that they haven't confirmed that you could have it for 14 days without
Right.
symptoms, but up to 14 days.
Up to
I think
14 days.
realistically, you're looking at maybe 5 days that you could
Right.
have it and then show symptoms.
Exactly.
So even in those
You
5
can't,
days,
you can't,
but
but
still.
depending on your immune system,
could
depending
be
on
a
the
week,
individual.
could be 2 weeks, and
Right.
again, it has very similar flu-like symptoms. So
Right,
2
exactly.
weeks is it? I could easily
And
see that.
we're in the flu season also.
Yeah.
So a lot of people could be
Exactly.
mistaken as just the simple
Exactly.
flu.
And I can say that I've probably contacted 150 people this week, so things do spread very quickly in that way. Before we get any further, I want to take a quick break.